So, welcome to Tales Tomorrow. I'm Morrow, your storyteller for today. With me I have some more RPG horror story. Never mind, we have email submissions, at least one more for today. Speaking of submissions, if you want to submit your submissions, it should be linked down in the description below somewhere for you to submit for the email. Send me an email or two. Write me, say hi, say hello. Looking forward to your email submissions, and I'm gonna get to the first one for today. Railroad guest DM quits out of nowhere with no explanation, forcing co-DM to rewrite the whole chapter. AITA. Hey Morrow, warning you and this potential viewers now that this may be a long story. When I wrote the prelude to this out, I got a warning for being super long. Apologies in advance. Feel free to cut out whatever you think is fluff to the overall story. To me, it's all interwoven, but it may make more sense if some things are cropped out. I worried that my group might recognize the story, so I guess it wasn't spicy enough to get much traction online. Now that it's boiled over, I guess it's a real proper horror story, and not just me being absurdly stressed by a nightmarish series of small individual events. This will conclude as much to the prelude as it can boil down to basics, but for the sake of much brevity as I can, but the context is important. Luckily, I'm pretty sure my group doesn't listen to you. No shade to you, of course. You're really wonderful and inspiration to me. I just stress about what they might think if they ran into this and recognized it, since our whole sort of setup is so distinct. No offense taken, I don't mind being a tiny little channel with a big pool of RPG horror stories. No, for real though. Like, we got a tiny little channel, sure, but you know what? I am proud of the work we've done together. You and me both, all of us together. Man, we've done an amazing job with this channel, and could be more proud of you guys. Thank you. Anyway, let's continue. This is kind of an am I the a-hole? While my group tells me it's not my fault, I really don't believe them. I feel like I'm the one who messed this up, just because I wanted to have fun and didn't know any better. This is a custom system that's a mishmash of many systems. Our head DM says it's quite similar to GURPS, which I haven't played, but I'll take her word on it. It's well balanced and has undergone a lot of revision in order to perfect. Due to how we play this, we have an absurdly large party. This is normal. We offset this by having a multitude of DMs. For the sake of the story, really only 3 or 4 of them will matter, and technically all staff members are DMs. Even players can run small events they'd like. Attending sessions is not mandatory, it will run things basically like West Marches. Things seem weird about this story when it comes to DM and player count. This is normal. It will sound kind of absurd to you and others, but trust me, it works for us. Oh no, it works for me too. My campaign is also West Marches. We have like almost like 40 players. Yeah, almost like 40 players, but obviously not all of them playing all at the same time. A DM and like maybe 6 players are running for a session on Tuesday, and then another DM and 6 more players playing a session on a Thursday, and there's maybe a session happening every 2 weeks on a Saturday, stuff like that. It sounds like a lot, but it works out. Don't worry, it works out nicely. The basic premise of this game is that it's a multi-dimensional mashup, where our characters from whatever universe we would like to have all been sucked into the same, and their entire goal is to get home. Our unfortunate crew has been dragged into the myriad of universes now, and things seem to be going the best or worst they've ever been. We are magically whisked away before we have the time to really process it. We're a year into this and very deep into the story. This newest chapter we only recently began was being written by a guest DM, who has otherwise been a pure player beyond this little side story with his merchant. Yes, sometimes players make merchant NPCs for funsies, don't worry about it. Let's call this guy Hardass. While I initially got along with Hardass due to the relationship my primary character had with his, things sort of started to devolve after his character's disappearance. I have a bit of a history with him now, where my jokes didn't land right on him, or I'd do something in character that literally didn't affect him that he didn't like. I tried to talk to him about it, say the way he'd snap at me would make me upset, but he just berated me in PMs, and after that our relationship was rocky at best. Instead of talking about things, he'd just get upset and bottle up the anger. This will be important later. Ooh, we were starting off with a really bad recipe. Having a player like that just bottles things in and never gets the thing addressed or takes things too seriously or doesn't realize that somebody's joking around or messing around. Yeah, that could definitely cause a bit of a problem. Like I said in previous story, pressure. So Hardass starts his chapter with one of the main co-DMs who we'll call Scale. There's immediately red flags for me. We have been forced into situations where we have lost all of our gear. Gear reward extremely hard to obtain. We have no quick way of getting it back. Unless you specify ahead of time you're going to do this and talk it out with players who would be affected severely by this being done, the start is always a massive red flag for me, because unless you get your things back in quickly, it will go very poorly. That's a sucky thing to do. I mean, listen, if you need players to get something, make sure you give them ample time to do so. Give them at least a minute or 2 to figure out if they got everything they wanted with them. So guess what? He did not specify it ahead of time, nor did he talk it out with the players whose character would be severely affected by this. When characters lose things they needed to survive. One basically lost their liver. Instead of trying to help figure things out, Hardass went into his staff chat to blame one of the PC's circumstance on their player, which Scale added onto some. Scale is a very nice person normally, so seeing this was like getting him with a whiplash. I didn't inform the player that we're gossiping about this, and she still feels a little betrayed, even if it's mostly cleared up now. How dare this player lose their liver? Wow, what a terrible player. Like, dude, what kind of rush job do you have to be to get a player to just literally lose the freaking liver? The lost their liver. It's not like, you know, rope and pittance and rations. It's a liver that they lost. How bad of a mess up do you have to do as a DM to get a player to lose their liver? But also talking bad about your players behind the scenes, not a great look, honestly. So crap is already bad by the time we start, and literally every player has a million questions and are super anxious about it. Hardass, to my knowledge, answers basically none of them to start. We literally have to badger this guy and scale into answering player questions. Can't get our gear back anytime soon, it seems. We get our first glimpse on the railroad. The railroad continues when Hardass specifies that in this chapter there will be strictly no multiversal anything. You know, in a campaign that is literally about multiversal shenanigans, like it is the genre of our game, where characters come from whatever freaking property under the sun. Run the gamut from hardcore Warhammer characters to little My Little Ponies, bro. Nothing is safe. Even very minor multiversal occurrences are off limits apparently, because when I try to bring up my characters back in one of the meaningless small trinket items on the side, I get told off for it. There are other red flags along the railroad as small things that are too niche for them to really matter to the reader, but they are there. Is your DM, is a hardhead a control freak by any chance? Because I feel like they gave it off a very control freaky vibe. Maybe they're just not liking with the whole like multiverse thing. Maybe they just want a campaign that is not the multiverse campaign. Maybe they just want a campaign that's literally just a straightforward down a narrow road. I don't know. Something definitely going on behind the scenes though. Conflict between the NPCs of this chapter and our party starts fast. Hardass's main NPC is, you guessed it, a Hardass, and he does not hear out our characters in the slightest. To me, he's just in character. My very mellow healer gets peeved about a cultural site that NPCs don't know they've made a taboo from her universe that they've violated. She's immediately rubbed the wrong way by the unfamiliar group. It's not just my character either. Almost every NPC has some reason to dislike the NPC group. Let's call this NPC group the Guild, because they'll come up a bit. This is where one of the NPC played by a friend we'll call Pulsar comes in. Pulsar is freshly out of a long hiatus. His original PC was very good friends with my first PC, and in death basically entrusted the PC with a very important duty in the story's lore. I think I'm pretty good friends with Pulsar himself, since we play games and joke to each other on call all the time. There seems to be zero animosity. His Paladin NPC, the extremely hard lawful type, and written very well at least, comes into conflict with my healer. I'm having writing out the discourse between these two, and I verbally tell Pulsar that I love how he writes, and think the way our characters conflict is really fun. Every now and again, I'll crack a joke at his paladin's expense, thinking it's all in good fun. He really doesn't seem to mind it, and he's also jokes about my healer and other characters a lot too, and I know that's all in good fun. Other PCs also have issues with the guild. Pulsar's paladin comes off as rude to a lot of them, and the leader of the guild, written by Hardass, is also having problems with other PCs. My healer vents her frustration to some of the other party members, but all of their actions are being watched by the guild, and her narrative in turn irritates the guild, as both sides accuse the other of lying and insulting them. I and the other players understood this to be an all-in-character drama. However, I noticed in the voice call that Hardass seems to be avoiding the main group call more than he normally does, and when Scale joins, he sounds frustrated and exhausted. But no one says anything, so myself and the rest of us assume everything is okay and continues normal. First hard bump is when the guild's leader slights our artillery guy. Our already feels used, and because he is near universally liked by all the other PCs, the issue between the guild and our party gets really dragged into the light. We'll make a joke that Hardass, Scale, and a very good friend of mine who was with them take the way too seriously, despite it being our freaking inside joke meme channel. I get a little unsure here if Hardass wants this conflict to be occurring or not, because it really just seems like he intends to make it worse here. It's really puzzling to me, because every step along the way he is doubling down. Of course, Hardass is a Hardass, but you'd think he'd know the rule that as a DM, you aren't supposed to be working against the players, especially in a very freeform style like ours. I really don't know here if he is doing this on purpose or not until our next bump. It sounds like Hardass is taking everything you guys are doing in character as a slight against them personally, and they're taking it personally instead of as a DM and playing as the NPCs. It's one thing if NPCs are annoyed with your party, but it's another thing when your DM is annoyed with your party. And if they find some sort of like annoyance or they have frustrations or something and they can't just bottle it in or can't process through it and be mature about it and just be like a regular DM through it, then maybe they aren't intended to be a DM. Maybe they've reached a boiling point or reached a burnout. Maybe they need to step away from the DM position. One day, one of our tank NPCs who's rapidly dying is having a mental break. As you do when you're dying, or feel like you are. Trust me, I've been there. He draws a gun on Scale's archivist NPC, and for brevity's sake, let's just say at the end of this we had 2 of our magic users in critical condition and our tank was arrested by the guild. This really inflames tension, and I really feel like Hardass is deliberately trying to work against us and not with us. I'd felt it before, but I really thought now that we were going to crack and something didn't happen. By the end of this session, Hardass does seem kind of pissed off, as do some players. 2 other staff members take up the role of middlemen to discuss the issues a lot of the players are having with the chapter so far, as it finally comes up in voice call that I'm not alone in my feeling that we're getting railroaded and worked against. Other players feel really pressured and it's starting to boil. Nothing is said to me. I just forward my personal complaints to one of the staff members who requested that people do so to them, and he says a lot of my concerns are shared with others. I at least feel a little vindicated that I wasn't alone. The breaking point seems to happen when my first character asks the paladin about the tank, and the paladin says some really awful crap about him. My character here is also a tank, so for clarity I'll just call them my main. My main is close to the tank, and unlike my soft-spoken healer, they more readily speak their mind. They tear the paladin a new one, and the paladin calls for them to be arrested, to which they immediately go into hiding. Stirs up a bit of commotion to the character's radio channels and results in being locked by Scale's archivist. Really weird way to proceed forward. Immediately when somebody is bad-mouthing towards the NPCs, they get put in trouble, on a watch list, arrested. What the hell is going on? Roughly the next day, I'm just browsing the channel looking for a place to stream some art, and I have friends to chatter with. And I find one without main DM, Hardass and Scale. I hop on, to which main DM immediately tells me now is not a good time. I say okay, and leave the other call, where one of the other players is. The way our main DM said it, it really put an anxiety into a tizzy. This is after I accidentally made Scale upset over something rather small, resulting in him joining the player call to give a general announcement not to do that thing, despite not specifying not to do it before, and plenty of people doing it before me. The problem is, I was the only person who did that and knew I was, so it hit me really hard why he didn't like me. PM me about it. I basically completed shutdown and left session early. I didn't do it ever again. It made me feel really like crap. After this happened, I was really thinking about taking a break from the game because it was making me feel so bad, and not just from this. Shortly after the call happened, I'm PM'd by another player saying to go a little lighter on the jokes of Pulsar, since turns out they were making him a bit upset out of character. I of course immediately went to Pulsar's PM to apologize to him and talk it out. And talk it out we did, or at least I thought so. Seemed really understanding we both talked out feelings about the matter. I agreed that I'd do my best to go easy on the jokes and told him I was just fooling around. It didn't mean any harm by them. He clarified that he really didn't find the conflict between our characters fun, and I said while I wasn't sure there was any way to go back on it now that so much was done, I would actually try not to have my characters beef with his. He agreed to this too, and it seemed to be going in that direction. If Pulsar didn't like the way your characters bantered, why didn't they say something ahead of time in the first place? Like, at the end of the day, if you don't like the way characters are bantering, speak up. Say it out loud. Say, hey, I didn't really like that interaction. I wasn't really fun. I don't really want us characters to do that again in the future. Can we not do that again? Can we just go back to how we were before? Or something. I don't know. If you guys have been bantering like this for so long and Pulsar never tells you that they don't like it, that's kind of on Pulsar to say that they don't like it, unless there was some very obvious signs or something. But communication is kind of important, especially when it comes to, like, in-character roleplay. Some people can seem like jerks in roleplay. I've seen the people act like complete and utter a-holes in VR chat roleplay and stuff, and the dude's so good, you kind of start thinking to them, do they have a stick up their ass or they're just playing the character really well? But then you talk to them afterwards, like after session and stuff, and they're super friendly and super chill. You just realize, oh yeah, it's just literally just in character and stuff. They're just really chill like that. But not everybody takes this kind of roleplay this easily. It's like, smooth like butter. Some people take it personally, and if you don't like the way characters interact and stuff, you should probably speak up and let them know, like, hey, I didn't like the interaction. I don't like this bantering. Can we not do that? Just simple as that. Communication is kind of a key to this kind of thing. The same day I PM'd our head DM and told her I was thinking about taking a step back from the game, which is when she brought up the call. Turns out it was Hardass and Scale approaching her about some issue they had with me, which was mentioned was me abusing my staff powers. The minor incident I had prior with Scale where he had told me off and finally my characters backing each other in conflict. Nobody had told me about these prior, and I was dumbstruck. Despite me being so open, no one had bothered to come to me first to ask me about these problems. Now, our head DM is awesome, and I feel so crappy every time she has to mediate the conflict. She's got enough crap going on in her life, and I really hate that she had to deal with the social problems our group encountered. She agreed with me that Hardass and Scale should have talked to me first, and should have talked to me when the problem initially arose, instead of waiting for them to reach a breaking point. But she, when she told them, basically said they didn't want to talk to me about it. Knowing my history with speaking with Hardass about problems, sure, that made sense, but Scale? Scale was a good friend of mine who knew I don't have problems talking stuff out with people and that I value communication. Our head DM laid out the issue to me. First point, abusing my staff powers was kind of a nothing burger. They were extremely vague with this, saying I'd gone into a spectator mode that normally only staff have for our VTT a lot during others' events. However, I don't recall ever abusing spectating during the events at all, of which there's really been 2 and they were pretty recent at the time, so it's not like I had forgotten or anything. The only DM could think of that spectating the events was recently was one of the other co-DMs, and the DM had said that it was a perfectly okay thing to do. I went into the PMs to confirm this even. When I mentioned that they were saying I was abusing spectator at our VTT, this co-DM couldn't think of any time I ever done that. Staff members spectated other DMs' events at the time, so we were both really baffled by why this is suddenly an issue. And only for me. It's not like I ever used the knowledge of metagame, always been really good about keeping what I knew out of character and what I knew in character separate. I asked our main DM if Hardass and Scale could clarify that point, or if they could provide any specific instance of me spectating that they consider to be abuse of staff powers. They didn't provide any at all. The second point was quick. I told our main DM that I only done it once, trying to help Scale, and when they came into a voice to tell me off, I never did it again. I don't know why this was a point at all, because this seemed like the list of things I was going to repeat as opposed to one of instances that never happened since. Our main DM did get a little upset, not at me, when I mentioned that after Scale told me off in call, that I felt so bad that I kind of been avoiding main story events. The third I hadn't meant to do, but I definitely understood why they saw it that way. I established in last chapter that my healer and main had become friends, since after my main had been severely injured in a raid. They'd spent a lot of time in the medbay, where of course my healer is all the time. So my main found out the guild was mad at my healer, then naturally asked why. Scale interpreted this as my main backing up my healer in an argument, which it wasn't, but I didn't really defend it. I understood why it could have been seen that way, and I apologized for it. Told our main DM I try to avoid doing something like that again. So it just really confused me. These points absolutely were not the issue, and something was going unsaid. I knew it, and my main DM knew it, and she was trying to get clarification from Hardass and Scale. She seemed really defeated, saying, "No one is being an adult here." I felt really bad. I did want to take a step away from things, but I was really in the middle of some nice story beats with other player characters. I wanted to continue those, so I did. I shied away from the main story plot for a bit, and Pulsar and I will pretty damn proactive on keeping our characters from arguing, even if it was what the characters would do. Things seem to be on the mend. Yeah, for real, it sounds like there's a lot of like witch hunt going on where there's nothing really going on, and even then, spectating another game while you have a different game going on, I think is fine. I mean, listen, some players obviously are going to be using the meta game information to try to gain something, and if you have the kind of players that do that sort of thing, I feel like that's something you need to talk to the player specifically about. But if you're on the DM side of things, you're going to be DMing and running stuff for everything, I think it's fine for DMs to be able to spectate each other's events and stuff, and, you know, be the DMs, they be the appropriate DMs are supposed to be, and keep it on a hush-hush, because their characters technically wouldn't know this kind of stuff, but that's just part of being a DM. As a DM, inadvertently, you gotta be in on the know on everything that is going on. All the big story arcing things planned out, as well as the big plot points and big things going on, because DM communication is kind of important. If, let's say, for example, you have a big attack by some sort of a demon cult going on, and you don't let the other DMs know that this specific town has a cult, and this specific day there's gonna be some weird shady stuff going on, and that's not communicated to the other DMs so they can run stuff for that specific event or that specific town, then you kind of make it a really difficult position for everybody else in the DM side of things to not have things going on. Communication between DMs, especially towards story events, is kind of important. Make sure everybody's on the same page. Everybody knows exactly what's going on. Everybody knows what place kind of be like, I don't know, like an off-limits place or a dangerous place to run like more difficult combat in that specific territory or that area or that specific information, you know? Making sure the DMs are on the same page and know what they're talking about and communicating is kind of important, unless you guys have unless you divide your whole story as like little pieces of pie, you know, over to the east is this DM's domain, over to the west is that DM's domain, and so forth and so on. I get my own example too. Mary was running a bunch of stuff in our campaign, basically where a bunch of Fey events would come in, like almost like a bleed of the Feywild into the material plane, with maybe some minor portals here, a slight deformation there, nature and swamps completely turning to something wicked and twisted because some sort of a Fey bleed is happening to the world. And after talking to Mary about it and learning more about it and how it's supposed to be, I implemented that idea into one of my own sessions for players, so that there will be its own like Fey break into the material plane for my own session. If Mary didn't communicate that to me, I'll be able to run this stuff in the first place and add to the cool storyline and cool event that Mary is trying to run for the campaign. If she doesn't communicate that stuff to me, and if I don't ask her about it, then obviously I'm not gonna be able to run anything cool, which I guess wouldn't be too terrible, but also be kind of like a missed opportunity. Communication between DMs is kind of important, especially if you're going to be running a West Marches campaign with a lot of DMs. Cut to a few days ago, after a really successful couple of events, my healer and the paladin didn't get into any fights and were pretty chill while working together, even when alone together. The mood was pretty high in the party after mission success, and in a voice call, Pulsar sounded just as happy as the rest of us seemed to be enjoying his time. However, after one of the other PCs told me, leader of the guild, that she got some information to him, Hardest and Pulsar abruptly left the Discord server we were in. There was no warning, no explanation, and we didn't even know about it for a while after the fact. It was so confusing. Nothing had gone wrong. There'd been no conflict, no real source of stress that we could really think of. I sent Pulsar a friend request so I could try and go check on him to make sure he was okay, worried something I'd said had been a little too much for him. However, a little later, I got a ping from Scale, telling me off again for nothing in particular and saying that Pulsar didn't want me to speak with me and that he didn't feel like we cleared things up at all. Feeling like I did something wrong, I retracted my friend request. I went about apologizing to Scale, saying I felt like all this was my fault. I was reassured by Scale that it wasn't just my fault, and the other staff members reassured me as well that it was kind of a build-up of things and that I was just making busy, interesting roleplay while we waited for stuff to happen in a big story plot. They agreed the guild was being antagonistic towards us, that we were being not worked with but against, and our main DM told me Pulsar was just being obtuse. Scale was left on his own to conclude his chapter, having to completely rewrite it now that Pulsar and hard-ass NPCs were gone. He thankfully accepted help from our main DM that co-DM mentioned speaking with prior, but I feel so bad. I went to this DM later to apologize to him for being his problem player and ruining the story he wanted to tell. He apologized to me that no one had talked to me about their problems with what was going on, but I still feel so bad. I still feel so guilty, and I miss Pulsar. Thought we were pretty good friends even after all of that. What confused me even more is that after that, Pulsar reached out to me on Steam, where we do have each other's friended, and asked about the missing friend request. He seemed the same way he was when he talked stuff out before, understanding. He didn't seem upset, but confused. I told him that Scale said he didn't want to talk to me at all, and that he said that he was just overstating it. So I don't really know what is really the case there, or if my friendship with Pulsar is over at all. I was also told another pretty close friend of mine in this group is upset at me, but she hasn't said anything about it either, and seemed to be okay interacting in spaces I'm in, or that I've invited her to, or with me in other roleplays. Am I the a-hole here? Can't help but feel like I've completely ruined this chapter's intended course and put all this burden on my main DM and Scale, being mean to Pulsar without even knowing. I feel so guilty, and I don't know what to do. Again, sorry for how long this was. The whole situation has so many layers, so much complexity it hurts. Thanks for reading this all, if you do, and sorry for maybe taking up a whole video with it. It took me 3 hours to write this whole thing. I know, shame me. Don't feel so bad, it took me like an hour and a half to write my own RPG horror story on RPG Horror Story submissions. Your story has a lot of layers, a lot of complexity, and just like Shrek or an onion, there's a lot of layers that need to be peeled back in order to really look at the root of things. And in this situation, I feel like it's really strange for you to take the blame for what Hardhead is doing, because Hardhead is just being a hardhead. I feel like the problem isn't necessarily with you whatsoever. Not only were all of you railroaded into a storyline that basically does not use any of the metaverse or multiverse stuff that you guys are doing with all your characters being from different series together, but it completely throws away any sort of player agency and forces you guys to go on a railroad track. If you're not found the cha-cha chugga chugga choo-choo storyline, then the guild gets mad at you and everybody else becomes antagonistic at you, and then Hardhead treats you guys as if they're not supposed to be playing with you, but instead playing against you, and then constantly turning things on your party. Honestly, I feel like that's a problem with Hardhead themselves specifically. Whatever crawled up their butt and died in there, it's their problem at this point, and I feel like it's nothing that has to do with you specifically or anything you or your party has done. If anything, multiple players complained the fact that, hey, there's so much railroading, and the whole campaign, the premise of our campaign of being with multiverses and a bunch of characters from different media is just not even being adhered to for this storyline that Hardhead is running that has specifically been designed to include all the multiverse stuff together, even the tiny ones, the big and the little things. If Hardhead doesn't want to play a multiverse campaign and wants to play on a railroad, they could start their own campaign that's a railroad and make everybody work with the guild and say nothing bad to the guild and constantly agree with the guild and stick on rails. Basically, if that's what they want, if that's the kind of experience they want to give to players, they should just make their own campaign, their own game, find players that want to play in the railroad instead of forcing you guys to suddenly shift from this open do whatever improv adventure to a railroad with no multiverse stuff. Pulsar's issue probably was something else entirely. I doubt it was literally because of you and your characters bantering with Pulsar character and like having a bit of like a of back and forth that they didn't like, because you said you stopped doing this and then stopped eventually completely, so there must have been something else going on. Maybe Hardhead and Pulsar were hanging out too much and they were basically trying to kind of rile each other up to basically eventually quit. Sometimes people do that. It's gonna sound really crappy because it is a crappy behavior. I know some people that do that. Whenever they want to leave a thing, like let's say a D&D server or something, right? They'll try to rile up everybody else in a tizzy, make everybody else also just equal as upset as they are, to get them to also want to leave, so they have a massive exodus. There's a particular DM in there, a rogue DM from my RPG horror story, that specifically wanted to rile everyone in a tizzy, including myself, Mike, and a bunch of other people, and saying, you know what, we don't need lore DM, we can just start our own thing. And I still wanted to continue playing because, you know, at the time, you know, ignorant dumb Morrow didn't realize there was a lot of problem going on, didn't want to leave early on, so I was like, I kind of want to stay and see what keeps going because I like to play D&D. Whatever you and Lord DM have going on is not me. But for some people, they just want to be able to have like a scorched earth kind of leave. They want to try to get as many people out as possible to try to ruin the server. No, you didn't ruin the server. No, you're not the a-hole. You're doing a little bit of spectating and talking in character, not agreeing with somebody else's DMs or railroad and stuff, or not be able to understand when another player doesn't like the banter because they don't communicate the banter is not your fault either. And spectating other games as a DM that you should be honestly spectating at some point and you are allowed to just observe without using the meta knowledge, that's not a problem in the slightest. I spectate a bunch of games that Mary and Micah are running. Whether I'm playing or just observing, I'm spectating the other games that other DMs are running because I'm generally curious of what kind of story they got going on and how things are gonna go. To me, watching my friends play D&D is fun, and even if I learn some sort of meta knowledge as a DM, I'm not gonna use it for my characters. Meta knowledge information is gonna get out, especially if you're gonna be DMing, because sometimes you're gonna be spectating some games here and there. But as a DM, you sort of should know about what's going on, so you can be in on the know in case you need to run your own stuff of certain events going on and certain events happen and stuff. DMs are gonna know meta information, and that's okay. That's normal. It just means you just don't meta the information and give the information as a meta knowledge to your characters. Simple as that. The little roleplay you did between your healer character and a tank character with another character questioning about why the healer character is being like questioned, besmirched and stuff, that's fine because that's in-character stuff. You just role playing. That's all you're doing. It's just a role play. Anyway, you're not the a-hole whatsoever here. Hardhead and Pulsar clearly got some sort of issues going on, clearly got some sort of problems going on, and they'll probably have more problems going on than just with you. Probably with the server or other players or personal issues they got going on. Maybe they should start communicating this stuff better, communicate about their wants and intentions. Like Hardhead should probably communicate they want to run a railroad campaign without any sort of metaverse stuff instead of playing the current campaign if they don't want to do it. And Pulsar should be communicating, hey, I didn't like the way our characters interacted. Could we not have that be a thing? Anyway, thanks so much for your story submission. I really do appreciate it. And with that, that's going to be all our stories for today. I want to thank you very much for watching, and thanks so much for being here. If you like what I do, consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. Also, if the RPG Horror Stories ever goes down, or if you want to submit your own personalized horror story, email is down in the description below. I'll see you again in more Tales Tomorrow. Bye-bye.